Welcome to another episode of the BiGG Umbrella Podcast. That's big with two G's. I'm going to repeat that. That's big with two G's. And I'm your host, Poncho. If you know, you know. And we tapping in with Moses. I'm going to let him introduce himself because that's what I usually like to do because I don't want to take over too much. So here we go.
Yeah, man. I'm really happy that you guys reached out. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Moses Small. I work as a reporter and weather forecast at ABC 10 News, so I'm a broadcast journalist.
Let them know. Repeat that one more time because that's big.
I'm an Emmy-nominated journalist, and, right now I'm a podcast guest.
And like I told you before, usually like I tell everybody, I appreciate your time because time is something you will never get back. So I appreciate you even giving us that.
Anytime.
So for starters, even like where are you even from?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story how I landed here. I'm from Maine originally. My girlfriend and I both grew up in Portland, Maine, way next to Canada. We grew up with freezing, bitter winters, and I'd always had this dream of going to California. And so I went to school in Boston, and then a few years ago moved to Bakersfield, spent 2 years working as a reporter, anchor, did everything out there. And then just September 2022, finally made my way out here, and I've been loving my time in San Diego ever since.
Now, going back to you said you grew up in Maine. What was the weather like? You said it was so cold. What was that? Because I mean, me personally, I'm not adapted to the cold. So what was that cold weather even like for you?
To give you a sense of it, I got a lot of family members from Kenya. They tell me you're not built for that.
Right. That's what I'm like, what was Maine like for you down here in Canada?
Okay, so here's the thing. During the summers and the fall, beautiful, right? Beautiful. And it's just a very different climate, very foresty. But then you get these 7-month-long winters where I have family back home. Yeah, you really have winters that are 7 months long. You get lots of snow, almost like being in the mountains here or something. But they had wind chill back there just a few weeks ago. That was minus 40 degrees. So I remember growing up and going to school.
Minus 40.
Minus 40 wind chill. That's maybe as bad as it gets, but you'll see that there. And so you have months of ice. I don't like the cold at all. And I remember walking to school and your face freezes, so you start talking slowly. And overall, I mean, the winter's cool, the snow's cool for like a month, but I knew I really needed a change.
And you said winter's cool and the snow was for a whole month. I did that for like a couple of days, and I'm like, that's crazy. Have you ever driven on black ice?
Absolutely.
Oh, man, you said that like that's normal.
That is normal there.
That was scary as hell. I had a rental one time, and I drove on black ice. Luckily, I didn't crash, but that was the scariest driving event ever.
I'd say there's some things you can get used to, some things you can't. The snow I can handle, the black ice, not. There's no way to really prepare for that. But there are things you can do, but I'm used to, so when people get concerned about the rain here, I kind of chuckle to myself.
Right, because
I'm a little. From Maine, that's a regular Wednesday for me. But, it is a different thing though, adapting to the heat, right? So being in California sometimes, So for me, I mean, more so when I was in Bakersfield, I had never seen really anything over 100 degrees on the thermometer. Yeah. So flash forward to the day I move here, 110 degrees, loading up the U-Haul, dying. Yeah. So San Diego's a nice middle ground.
So for you, how long did you stay out of Maine? Did you like experience high school out there, middle school, everything like that?
Yeah, I was actually born in Alabama. So I was born in Alabama, then I was adopted by a family in Maine when I was less than a year old. So both my biological parents, my blood family, most of them are in Kenya. My mom and my dad came here. Various events happened, right? That led to me being adopted, but I was born in Alabama, then I had grown up in Maine. So I lived my whole life out there, but I still have a lot of connection to my heritage and a lot of connection to my family still in Kenya.
So your family in Kenya, you actually know your mom and your dad?
Yes, and that was only as an adult.
Right.
I didn't grow up with a lot of that.
That's the same thing for me. Like I actually kind of, no lie, like I just met my dad probably from today, like probably a couple weeks ago. I'm 31 years old.
Weeks ago?
No lie.
Oh my God.
I'm 31 years old and I just met my dad like a couple weeks ago.
Seriously.
No lie. So when you said that, I'm like, I know exactly what that's like now. It's adapting to you meeting your parents later.
Oh my goodness, yeah, because I mean, my biological mom had contact with me from when I was young because it was an open adoption, right? So we could have communication, and that's part of the reason why they chose the parents I grew up with, my wonderful adoptive parents, because it was cool for them to have the mom reach out, right? And I grew up with a white family. They were super into me, getting into knowing my heritage and stuff, but I saw my biological mom in person and my little brother, my little sister 4 or 5 times growing up, but then in 2018, I went to Kenya, and I met everyone, including my dad. So I'm 24 now, and I met my dad at age 20.
So what was that even like and you went to Kenya to even meet them. So
Yeah,
that's even bigger. What was
honestly,
that
man,
even
Kenya
like?
was dope. Kenya was. I mean, the people there were so nice. You know,
Yeah.
and it's I think it's maybe an adopted thing, right? Because I grew up, and one of the weird things about adoption.
And
yeah,
when you went there, did you go by yourself or you brought your adopted parents as well?
So I went with my younger brother, my biological brother, and I went to go meet my entire family essentially.
And he already knows them.
It was his first time over there too.
Okay.
So he grew up in Alabama actually with my birth mom.
Right.
It's a whole thing there, but you know the people there were so nice, and it
Right.
was really interesting to me seeing people who looked like me for the first time in my life.
Right.
I had no idea what that was, right? Because growing up in Maine is one of the least diverse states in the country, I'll say.
Right.
So you don't see many African American people running around there.
Yeah.
And then not only African Americans, but Kenyans, people look like me. Then it's family, and so then I see my
Right.
dad, and I'm like, he has my forehead.
So when you saw him, you already seen a picture of him prior, so you knew that was your dad, or
See, I knew it was him, but I'd seen a couple pictures. I don't have a lot of memories of really seeing what he looked like. I
Right.
just saw him, and I was told it was him, and it was really interesting. I'll say it was interesting because you know, what do you say when you're meeting your dad?
right?
And for him, what do you say when you're meeting your son?
Right.
When your son's 20, you never met him and he lives an entire world away. What do you
Right.
say to that? So, I mean, I'm sure as it was for you, it's kind of this eye-opening thing, but I think that experience can never really live up to what you would imagine that to be in your head.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
it's like, it was really interesting, but then in a sense, it was almost anticlimactic because he has this interesting life. He has another family now, and he works as a pilot, and it was cool,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's not like he had really been planning on meeting us. That was a surprise.
Mhm. So it was more so like he didn't know you guys even gonna pop up that day, or like it wasn't.
He knew we were in the country,
Mhm.
but he didn't know. We hadn't originally, when we went there, we hadn't ever made plans to meet. So
Mhm.
it just so happened that we had corresponding free time. And
That's
then
so you didn't even, you went to Kenya not even thinking you was gonna meet your dad.
I didn't think that was going to happen. No, I didn't know. It's funny. I hadn't, and I'm very grateful that I did meet him. I honestly am. I just didn't imagine, it didn't come into my head really. Because I met maybe 70 family members out there. It's such a big family. So
Dang, how long were you out even out in Kenya?
a month. I
Wow.
was out there for a month.
And what made you even? Was it just because like you know that's where you're from? You wanted to just go back there? What was it even made you go to Kenya?
So that's my birth mom. That's my birth mom who really,
Right.
she always wanted me to get back and connect with my heritage because I have a weird relationship with family, a weird relationship with heritage because I grew up adopted, and I had a very happy childhood and everything. So
Right.
everything was perfectly cool, right? But it's not like I had grown up around people who could really pass down that heritage.
Right.
So what better way than just go there for a month, right? I had a great time.
Right.
I had a good old time. I still remember getting off this 21-hour flight with my little brother. He had just turned 18 at the time.
21 hours.
Yeah, 21-hour flight, including all the layovers and all that. And so I'm jet lagged out of my mind.
Yeah.
And I met my my uncle and my aunts. They were like
At the
probably
airport?
7-8 years older. Yeah, and my grandma was there. It was this beautiful, just heart-touching moment.
Did they have like signs for you and stuff?
No, it's just so many people you couldn't miss them.
Okay.
I get there and I have all these pictures and stuff like that, you know, really heart-touching moments seeing the family. And I get there that night, and then my aunts and uncles were like, "Hey, have you guys ever been to a club in Kenya?" We never been to Kenya.
To a what?
Club in
A
Kenya.
club.
Yes.
All right.
And so my younger brother had just turned 18. So this is the first time he was legally allowed to do anything like that. And I was
Right.
20, so I wasn't,
And the clubs in Africa or Kenya, like that's, you could do 18.
Oh, drinking age out there is 18.
Okay.
And so I went there with my brother, and I don't know how much my younger brother remembers of that time, but the
To say the least.
pictures suggest we had an amazing time out there, and and it was cool. So we got to do everything there. We got to meet the people in the neighborhoods and stuff like that. They're in Nairobi, capital city of Kenya. So that's a 5 million person city. That's a huge
5 million.
Yes, it's very westernized. That's the first time I had KFC was out in Nairobi, right? Because I grew up they didn't have that in New England in the Northeast. So
That's crazy.
yeah, and so I got
They had KFC out there?
Oh yeah, they had KFC.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you put me on the stuff to do. Like I have no idea about it.
Listen, man, it's a fun place to visit. Yeah, Nairobi is an amazing place to visit. But that was basically it. Then I got some family out in the countryside, met them to northwestern Kenya near the border to Uganda. And that's where I got to see where my family has farmland. They have acres and acres and acres of farmland. And I got there, and one of the things I really remember most was my grandmother on my dad's side saying, you're home now. And everyone kept saying that to me throughout the trip. You're home now. We're your family. We're your loved ones. And they said that, someday when you're able to, we want you to build a little home on your family's land.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you basically have that waiting for you once you're ready to go back there.
Exactly. And so I haven't made it back yet since 2018, but if I can, that's another thing on my bucket list that I really want to do.
Mm-hmm. So your experience then going out there, meeting your dad and your mom, like, would you say that was beneficial, or it was something you didn't really need?
I think it was huge, because when you grow up like that, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but in my situation growing up with my adoptive family, there was so much love around me, right? And so it's almost that thing of my parents and stuff, that family chose me, right? So there's so much love there. But there is a little puzzle piece that's missing, and that puzzle piece is your heritage,
right?
Your blood family,
100%.
right? So that was when everything finally came full circle for me. And so not many adopted kids get that. And so I have to be grateful for that. That was huge for me, gigantic.
And how old were you when you were adopted?
8 months old, less than a year.
Holy shit.
Yeah, less than a year.
Crazy.
Less than a year.
So then, I mean, that's all you knew. Like, you didn't even know, like, oh, this isn't my mom, this isn't my dad. Like, that's all you knew. So,
well, I mean, I knew the situation. I mean, look, if you got me sitting in a white family, there's no
I'm saying, like, as you got older, you're obviously like, wait, they don't look like me.
Oh, well, I mean, I knew I was adopted from day one, essentially, because, you're not going to hide that, right? Now, that was what I grew up with, and it's totally normal to me. I see it as my family's just giant, and I have different extensions of it from different backgrounds. And so it's like that family of idea is cool because, family can be built, not necessarily blood or whatever, that always go. But it's like, yeah, man, blew my mind. And I'm sure you got a similar feeling meeting your dad. Do you mind if I ask what that was like?
Oh, that's no problem. Like me, like I said on here, like I have no problem. For me, that was like, honestly, I guess it was different for you because for me, meeting my dad, I already knew who that was. I didn't know that was my dad. So it was kind of just different. Like I found out because we had to go through some things and found out through there. But so once I just now knew, oh, I know who this dude is. I just didn't know he was my dad. So I guess it wasn't so much like, oh my God, this is so crazy for me because I kind of knew of who this dude is already. So I guess it wasn't too crazy for me, but I'm still adjusting because I'm already grown. So, I'm a move at my own pace. I can't adjust and be like, oh yeah, I just love you so much. And but we're adjusting and I hold no grudge. So he didn't know, I didn't know. So there would be no point in me being upset at anybody. So
it's a real healthy way to look at it.
Right.
Really healthy to.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, I would only be hindering myself if I would come into the situation like, I'm so mad that this, whatever didn't happen. Cause like, okay, it didn't happen. And I can't change what didn't happen. So if I'm still just looking back and just upset about something that didn't happen, like I said, it's just going to hinder the progress that I'm trying to get to. And
I mean, at the end of the day, it's still your blood.
Right.
The question then becomes, what does that mean? But no matter what really exactly it means, it's still your blood. Right. There's still love there in some form.
Exactly. And like you said, what does that mean at the end of the day? Because now it's like, from yesterday it wasn't, now today it's like, oh, this is your dad or this is your mom. It's like, holy shit. You can't all of a sudden like, I love you now and today. You have to then build a relationship. So that's how I took that.
Yeah, and that's huge. Building a relationship piece is really interesting too, because it's like it's one of those like relationships in life where for a lot of people it's just built in. But then when you're building it, there's no guidebook for building that relationship. Right. So you as the kid, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, bro. Like, I don't know anything about this.
Mesh with it.
Yeah, you mesh as best as you can, but at the end of the day, it's like you
as an adult.
Me or you as an adult, we're like, that's my dad. That is definitely my dad. He looks like me. He looks like me a little bit, but I'm like, I still don't know this person, but I don't know this person on an intellectual level, as in I've not spent time with them, spoken to them, learned their thoughts, but I know them on this weird other kind of profound level where I'm half of him, but I don't know him. Right. Who else has that? Crazy.
Right. So that for me, like you just said, like that was the same thing. Was like, this is half of who I am dearly, but it's like you said, I don't know this person personally, like on an intellectual level, like I don't know too much about you, but I'm looking to build that. So that's what we're working toward. You being in Maine, like you said, like there's not even many different races out there. What was that? Was that good for you out there? How was that for you?
I grew
if you're not really growing around people, growing up around people that look like you.
Well, I mean, again, I had this wonderful childhood that I'm very grateful for, right? But
Definitely.
but everyone's life presents different challenges, you know?
Right.
And I think for me, there was a couple layers there because there's one where I was kind of at odds more, and I had a lot of tension with the other kids who looked more like me growing up because they'd say,
Oh,
you walk a certain way,
you
talk a certain way, you
you talk
dress a
funny.
certain way, right? And so there was that, and then I would kind of have this conflict where that all dissolves when you get older and you're more secure in yourself, right?
Mm,
But I always had this tension of, okay, people are always trying to say that people of any background can be anything they want. Why are you coming at me for the way I talk or
right.
whatever, right? So, and that gets worked out with age, but that was something that was a pretty real thing, and it's not like
I'm sure.
it was a very diverse place. I mean, my hometown, Portland, Maine, was fairly diverse. You know, there's a pretty sizable Somali community. You know, many people from Middle Eastern countries, but even so, it just wasn't. It wasn't San Diego.
Right.
It wasn't San Diego.
This is like you get everything out here in San Diego, really. So definitely.
Yeah, and so some biracial people have written about that kind of push and pull, you know,
Mhm.
too black for the white kids, too white for the black.
Right.
If you're adopted, you kind of take on that. You take on a version of that story.
Right. So that's why I was honestly curious because I mean I couldn't personally speak on that, but I've always been curious as to like you were adopted into a white family, like how did they have to, I guess, adjust to you and then you kind of adjusting to them, or does it just fall into place?
Well, when you're less than a year old, that's mom and that's dad.
Exactly.
It's not like I grew up with anything else,
Right.
really, in that day-to-day type of way. So it was just a lot of love in that family. You know, they
Yeah.
love me, they support me, and they were, you know, they both work in the medical field. So when I told them I want to do broadcasting, they were supportive. So they gave me all the love I could have wanted as a kid, right? There were certain things that there's no way they could have understood, like
what you're going through personally.
well, they took me to Supercuts one time that didn't work out well, right? So, man, me learning my hair took a long time, man. This is, I don't even know how to maintain this really that well, but this took years of progress. Yeah, man, I went to Supercuts and I was scared of the barber for another like 17 years, bro. I was clueless. And so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of love, but at the same time, I'm blissfully ignorant of some things, you could say.
So after Supercuts, where do you have to end up going to get your haircut?
Though, like,
And how old were you with the Supercuts?
Oh, I couldn't have been older than 5.
Okay,
Couldn't have been older
so
than
you
5,
couldn't really
right?
make no decisions as to like, oh, I really like this barber, I don't like this barber yet.
Look, as I didn't have that insight at that time,
Right.
and so then there was fortunately a black barber in our neighborhood, who I ended up, you know, who was my guide throughout the entire period that I was living in Maine.
You're like, I know what you're going through. Let me take care of you.
Yes, yeah, but it's not like I even knew how to like maintain my hair. Like that whole thing was like really interesting to figure out. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, I can put hair oil in my hair and then I can comb it again.
Right.
After I do them, like, I was like, yo, there's all these things. There's like, I don't have to. This
without that oil, you're not getting through that.
No, dude, and especially this thick, curly, like, you know, I'm talking, I could break combs if I wanted to. So
I'm sure.
it's a lot of me making it harder for myself than I needed to, but thankfully good people around me have helped me out.
Mm. And in high school or middle school, where'd you even pick up instruments?
That was pretty young. So I think I played drums first and then I played violin. I think drums was like 4th grade, violin was 5th grade, and I loved it. You know, I loved doing music when I was young. So I did that. I basically was pretty committed to that all the way through the end of high school. And I'm talking private lessons, music groups. I played, the only wedding I've been to has been when I played violin at one. And so that was a big part of my life for a long time. Am I good at it now? No, rusty, but
but you learned it. And what even got you interested in wanting to do instruments? Play an instrument.
It's funny, for drums, I was like, that seems really cool, and so I kind of gravitated towards that naturally. But
did
then
you see like somebody performing on the drums? You're like, oh, I want to do that, or like,
I don't.
What drew you towards the drums at such a young age?
It's hard for me to recall what that came from.
Yeah,
I think that,
for sure.
You know, I'd always kind of had an interest in music and listening to music and like listening to bands and stuff like that. I became much more of a hip hop person later in life, but when I was very, very young, it's not like there was very much of that around me. And so I really fell in love with drums and rhythm and kind of the foundational role that can play in music, because a drummer really does in a lot of ways control a musical group if you're playing in that setting. And then friends around me started getting into orchestra. I'm playing violin. I was like, I don't want to play violin. And thank goodness my parents said, no, you're playing the violin, right? Because I ended up kind of taking that to higher places than I ever could have with the drums. I wasn't that good at drumming, but like I was a little better at violin. So that was a big thing for me. You know?
And why didn't you even want to play the violin?
I was like, I thought I had enough on my plate, but I was like also like 9. So take it or leave.
You already had a lot on your plate at 9?
I mean, I was a fairly busy kid as far as busy kids can go.
What the hell were you doing at 9?
Man, I was doing track. I was doing the whatever advanced math and English classes, whatever advanced whatever in school, then playing violin, then doing drums. Like it was a kind of like busy from a young age, which is something I thought about a little bit. It's kind of weird to be busy as a kid, but
that's why when you said 9, I was like, God damn, how you got a busy schedule at 9? You're supposed to be playing and going to school.
And I was doing a lot of that. There was a lot of that, but there was there was a level of like music was something I loved growing up too, but it was also time away from just being stupid.
Right.
Kid,
because everybody needs that time, just like you said, just to be a kid.
Yeah, I had my time as a kid. I certainly had enough time to be a kid, and I'm grateful for that. But I did also have some really cool stuff on the side, and that was music for me, and that was my hobby growing up. That wasn't like I did a whole lot else besides mess around with my friends, do school, and do music.
Did you feel like them keeping you busy was more so kind of to keep you out of trouble?
I wouldn't say that, only because it's not like Maine even has that much stuff.
Oh, because I'm not familiar with
Maine.
Yeah,
I mean, if you grow up in California, then you have other influences around you. It's not like Maine really has gangs like that. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the opportunities to get in trouble are really that many. So, I think it's more like they really wanted that. I think my parents saw that like I enjoyed this on a lot of levels, doing the whole music thing, trying to be creative. And so they just wanted that to push as far as it could. I think that's probably where it came from.
And then now with you kind of piggybacking off that with the music, I know you kind of were in like doing rapping.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Allegedly. What even inspired you to start doing rapping? Like what got you? And I don't even want to box you in as rapping. Like I guess you could kind of clarify, what was it, more so rap or was it R&B? Like what was it?
I mean, it couldn't have been R&B because I can't sing to this day, right? So it had to be rapping. I mean, keep in mind, though, to paint the picture, man, I was a nerd growing up. Like there's still lots of parts of me that are like that, right? But I was a nerd growing up, and so I loved English. I liked reading. And then I remember listening to hip hop for like the first few times. I listened to, Jay-Z and Nas, like that, more
That's
East Coast hip hop. Yeah, and then I was really into that. And I kind of got obsessed. I started listening. And then, my friends on the playground and stuff, I found out, through lots of trial and error and practice that I could freestyle. And so from like, let's say 13 years old, I was a kid in the park or whatever that could freestyle. And that spiraled into a whole number of things, including, I hadn't recorded music at all in high school, but then I remember my friends knew I could freestyle, so then they bet $100 on me to rap against this other kid who's known as a rapper, and like that whole thing was crazy.
This was in high school?
That was in high school, right? And no one knew I rapped really beside my little friend group, so it's not like I told many people. And so it was cool. And then in college, met my best friend in college.
Before you even go on that part, what happened with that $100 bet? Did you win or lose that?
Well, all right, so long story short, the person didn't show up. Much love. I don't know what happened. I'm assuming the best, and that maybe the scheduling wasn't sure, but it was at a football game, and it's not like I went to many football games in high school. But my friends were like, okay. Well, my friend came up to me and she said, "Hey, just let you know, I bet $100 on you in a rap battle." And I'm like, we don't have $100. All of us collectively don't have that.
Right. I was thinking like, damn, $100 in high school.
Yeah,
okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that was fun. And so I ended up, another person came around. And even by that time, I knew I wanted to get into some broadcasting stuff. So I was like, everyone put your cameras down. No one did. Right. And then no one did, of course. But then I ended up battling this other person. It went well, but no money was exchanged because the person didn't show up. And I don't think this other person was ready to, do that. So it went as well as it could have for the other main person not being there. Yeah.
And then from you excelling after that, how far did you take it from there?
Whew, embarrassingly far.
Embarrassingly far.
Yeah, I mean, I was, and I keep in mind, I grew up playing violin where you have to devote a lot of time if you want to get that solo in orchestra or whatever, or if you want to figure out that really hard passage in a song. And so I did that same thing with hip hop, because by the time I got to college, I wasn't taking violin and drum lessons anymore because I was away from home. And so I just focused a lot of energy on that. And so first it started with, being with my best friend who we chose to be roommates at the time. We were roommates pretty much all through college, and we'd freestyle for just hours on end. I'm talking hours, just putting on jazz hit. We type a jazz hip hop beat tape into YouTube. They'd be like an hour long, and we would just go for the whole thing, right? Damn. Good, the bad, the ugly.
Right.
And
then
kept
it going.
And he had recorded some songs in high school, and he was really good, right? And so he was like, "You ever thought of recording a song?" I'm like, "Nah." And then we end up recording songs.
Yeah.
And then it spirals into I was like, I'm devoting so much time to this and spending money on studio time. I'm spending money on the mixing and mastering. And I'm like, all right, let me just go crazy, drop an album and do one big show. Then I'll just drop it. Yeah, because I knew with the career stuff, it was going to conflict. So I had to just get it out of my system. So I dropped like an EP. It had like 6 tracks on it. It's not like I was even like good. Like I was like, I was too young for me, even in my journey, to really make the kind of quality I wanted, but I still loved it, right? But somehow that was enough for me to sell a ticket or two, and then that ended up becoming a thing.
You were selling tickets.
I was selling tickets, and then I'll never forget, Middle East Nightclub in Boston had my big show. It was like a talent showcase, but then I had my whole group. I had bugged all my friends.
Yo, y'all better show up, man.
Come out. And so then we end up with this packed crowd. And that was when I performed all the songs on the EP, and plus the other miscellaneous stuff. I had my best friends in the back as like hype men and stuff.
All this stuff.
And that's still on my Instagram to this day. Yeah. And the pictures are on my Instagram to this day. If you scroll down far enough, you'll see. I think I said, what a night to remember. And you can just see. Yeah. You see, everyone was all there. And so that was me being like, let me just get this out of my system, because I know that I don't want to be like a rapper for a living or anything. I want to do the broadcasting thing, and I know I'm not going to do both at the same time. So let me just get this out of my system, know that I did it just for the sake of doing it, and then I can move on to other things.
What even got you into broadcasting?
Ooh, I had to have been like 14. I was young.
14, you already wanted to broadcast?
Yeah, I ran for like class president or class vice president or something.
Did you win that?
Ran an awful campaign and lost. We got
How
some
other
position.
How did you even think about setting up a campaign? You said at 14?
Yeah, well, it was like student council and stuff, and so kids would do that, and so I threw my hat in. I think I got some other position or whatever, and then I ran an awful campaign. But then one of the seniors in the high school I was like a freshman, was just like, hey, you should do school announcements, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And then from school announcements, there was a radio station, WMPG in Portland, Maine, that ran out of the University of Southern Maine, and they had this program called Blunt Youth Radio, so high schoolers could host radio shows. Blunt Youth Radio, and that it was so high schoolers could host radio shows, like hour-long talk radio shows. And so I jumped in there immediately, and I was hosting radio shows. I hosted my first one when I was like 15, 16 years old, and I just loved it.
And what even was the topic of the radio show as a 15-year-old?
Some of them might be around. Well, I was really proud of an interview I had on a 16 or 17. Maine Senator Angus King was one of the people I talked to at the time. It would range in topics. Much of it would be news and politics related.
So at 15, you was already knowing about politics.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I could at the time.
Right. So I honestly don't like, because even now to this day, people don't, adults don't know too much about politics. What made you even want to invest your time in knowing about politics at that young age?
I think at the time I was really concerned with the fact that you look at politics, and of course there are many flaws with the word politics in itself. Is so scary, right? People are like, oh man, I want to do that, right? But at the other hand, it's like you also kind of want to have your beliefs about the way you want your surroundings to look, and what's the vehicle for making that happen? Voting. And what's the larger mechanism? That's politics. That's our political system, and the political system of other places. So that was kind of how I was like, okay, well, I have opinions, so let's talk about how to do that. And then through that was kind of giving me a better education to be exposed to other people too. I think one of the best things I ever got out of those conversations was realizing no matter what you believe, you're probably not always right. Right. And so you're going to meet really 100%. Intelligent, empathetic, wonderful people who happen not to agree with you. And you can still be cool with those people. Right. And so that's something I'm super grateful for. Pretty young, and just meeting so many people from, diverse backgrounds and opinions and beliefs and all that stuff. And so hopefully kind of helping me open up later on. Right. But I mean, it's not like I'm not like an expert on any of that stuff by any means, but I was just getting my toes in,
Definitely. So before you even got into broadcasting, what was like some of your first jobs?
Worked in the cupcake store.
a cupcake store.
I was the worst employee that store has ever seen.
And what made you the worst employee?
Man, I didn't know what I was doing, man. I didn't know what I was doing.
What was it that you even had? What was your position at this cupcake store?
I was like the cashier, and I was like selling cupcakes. And I remember I boxed the cupcakes horribly because mine like listen, growing up, man, I'm like, oh, I can talk decent. I can't do anything. I got no coordination, bro. I was not good at sports or anything. So I was like, so I could not box a cupcake to save my life. And my boss called me out, yelled at me in front of this customer, and I was 14. I'm all shaking. I'm like, what did I do? And then comes in the next day, and this is wild. I knew I had to quit that job.
You already started working at 14.
No, that had to have been 15, 16. That had to have been a couple years down the line, mid high school range. And then she said, I know I'm tough on you because it's not show friends, it's show business. And I'm just wiping the floor. I'm like, bro, I'm trying to learn. I'm in school. I don't got time for this. Then I worked in a men's clothing store. Really, really cool shop in Portland, Maine, where I got to like sell suits and all that stuff. And that was a dope experience. Stuff I could never afford, especially at the time, but it was cool to have that experience. Selling like, kind of like cool like men's clothing and all that. Yeah. And I was a parking lot attendant.
I think you put something on your Instagram. You like worked at a liquor store. You was like a parking or a gas station.
I worked at the gas station. Yeah, that was after college. That was after graduation, though.
Okay, yeah, it was a gas station. You said a parking lot. Was it a pizza as well?
I did work in a pizza shop in college. Yes. Yeah. And in college, I worked at a pizza shop. In college, I worked at a clothing store as well. And I remember the pizza shop was crazy because in college, I tried to do everything I could, like doing the journalism education. But then I remember I had this night shift at a pizza store. And so my friends would be having house parties inside. And the pizza store was right below, like in my college apartment. It was me and two of my best friends.
And we had a college again?
Emerson College in Boston. Sure. We had a pizza shop right below us. So they would be having fun upstairs and I'd come in smelling like grease at 3 a.m. and just bringing so many pizzas, right? So it was definitely cool to have that around. Yeah, man, but I did work a few jobs. I definitely tried to get involved whichever way I could.
And then with you in Bakersfield, what was that even like with you getting basically what you went to school for broadcasting?
I did, yeah.
So then you getting out and actually now you're in Bakersfield. What was that feeling like for you? For news, what was your outlet picking you up?
It blew my mind, man. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that people took a chance on me, especially for doing what I was doing. Because I graduated college 2020, peak pandemic time. The world was freaking out and exploding, and so then that's when I worked at the gas station. I was like, okay, I should probably get a job in my field. And so I hop on Google. I applied to like 50 places in like a day or two. I was just going crazy on Google firing out applications, and then Bakersfield got back to me. And it was cool because when you're in school for broadcasting, they usually say don't even try to be behind the anchor desk like an anchor. They say you'll only be a field reporter. I got to do both.
And why is that?
Because anchors generally are the more experienced journalists in the newsroom. So if you're fresh out of college, it's not likely you'll get that. But I was lucky working in they call it smaller market, that I was able to be a weekend anchor and weekday reporter. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
you got to do both, but what they said not to do.
Oh, well, I guess even funner because the weekend shows in Bakersfield that I worked on, there was a small staff, and so I was the only person behind the anchor desk, and I was also on the weekends the only weather forecaster. And then when we got really short-staffed, I was the only producer, as they're called. So that was probably for about a period of like 6 months, where I was like maybe 6 to 8 months right before I'd ended my time in Bakersfield, that I was also the only person putting the shows together, like putting what they're called the rundown, the show planner together, writing the scripts and all that stuff, hopping to go on the anchor desk, and then turning around and doing weather forecasts. Like that was crazy.
So you have many hats working there.
It was great. I'm grateful I had that much experience and that they trusted me with that, right? And the shows were great. We had a great time on that. The weekend team was cool, but I definitely never had that level of responsibility in my life. I was like, what? But yeah, that was a busy time.
With you being what you said, doing a weekend anchor and weekend this is back in Bakersfield.
Yeah.
Was the goal for you to be like the main anchorman?
I knew that as much as I was surrounded by these truly impactful, wonderful people in Bakersfield, I knew that my goal had always been to go to, somewhere that would
Bigger
present
market?
different opportunities in bigger markets.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so that's why I was very grateful when I got to San Diego, right? Because
Right.
they, got exactly what I wanted, right?
Right.
So, but eventually down the line, it's still an ambition of mine,
Mhm.
and however that happens, I'm sure it'll happen, but. It was I mean, there honestly, I was just trying to survive at that point because
Right.
I was busy. A lot of 12-hour days. A lot of 12-hour days back then.
And 12 hours is a lot to be working. What even brought you? How did you make it down to San Diego? I mean, obviously not too far from
yeah.
Bakersfield, but how did you make it to San Diego?
Oh, same thing. Just Google and send in applications.
Oh, so you found
Same
it. So
thing.
the job that you was actually applying for said, "Oh yeah, we'll take you on," and
Yeah,
you
well,
made that decision.
And thankfully the same thing, right? The people on my station were kind enough to again take a chance on me, and then allow me to come into a position. And so I had applied at my station. I applied to basically every station in the city, and then I really liked what was going on at talking to some of the people who were at this station, and then I applied for like 5 jobs there. I didn't have any job as a reporter. Right. Then they ended up needing a weather person. That was right when Hurricane K was coming through, right around that time frame. And so then immediately I went from just reporting out in the field, which is a super cool job to do, to also starting to do weather. And then that later became like another role of mine. So now I have another kind of hybrid role where I'm reported on the weekdays, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but then on weekends I'm now a weather forecaster, just like I was in Bakersfield.
So they're keeping you busy.
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
I'm all good.
So with you having to report in the field, you report in the field now?
I do, yeah.
So with you doing that, does it ever come to a point where it's dangerous?
Dangerous is a strong word. I mean, I think back, the most dangerous experiences I had, honestly, were probably in Bakersfield. One, because I haven't been here all that long yet. And Bakersfield, there are some situations in Bakersfield? There. 2 years. Okay. 2 years. Yeah, I mean, dangerous situation. There was a big wildfire season. I believe that was 2021. And there was a fire called the French Fire. This wildfire scorching tens of thousands of acres of land, right?
How did they come up with the name?
For wildfires?
For any, like, they come up with Hurricane Katrina. Like, what makes it go... Like, why is it Katrina?
I wish I knew. I bet I could Google that. And I bet I've actually read what that is before.
Yeah.
The reasoning for that escapes me. All I know was that this fire was big. Yeah. I was like, it's crazy. And so we got there basically the day that it had started. And so I remember walking through there and then knowing something was a little crazy when I watched people's propane tanks in their homes explode from this fire. And we had all that on video. And then that was. And
you were that close?
I was close enough, like let's say like a couple 100 feet away. So close enough that my camera operator could look at it and then see it and zoom in and see that stuff happening. And then we saw the wildfire. And I remember one time we had like hiked up this like ski slope in order to...
Were you wearing a suit at this time?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Up like for you to be hiking up and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I was still a little crazy. I wore a dress shirt.
Okay, for sure.
A full suit. But yeah, and then I remember like hiking up the thing, and we're seeing the firefighters there, and we're seeing them there, and then we're walking past some of them.
Yeah.
And then we saw the wildfire close enough literally for me to throw a rock at, and it was just like this wall of fire. It wasn't as high as I maybe had imagined, but you could feel the heat. And I remember being up on that ski slope. The air is a little thinner. We're carrying around gear. We're hiking around. And I could feel the heat. But the biggest thing was the smell. I smelled like barbecue for a straight week after that.
Yeah.
The car we came in smelled like barbecue for a week. And so I remember getting back to like, and it smelled like that everywhere. It smelled like that literally for miles and miles around when you had a wildfire that big.
Right.
But I remember not smelling like smoke anymore, and I was like, that's weird.
You became accustomed to smelling like ashes, and now it's like, oh, I'm not smelling. That's weird.
Yeah, man. What was I clean? Sort of. I've definitely been cleaner.
I can imagine with you being on the wildfires and ashes just falling on you and things like that. With you now you've got a couple, like you've been in now with 2 news broadcasting. Do you feel, as being African American, do you feel you're presented the same opportunities as everyone else is? Or has it ever been a situation where you felt like, I probably should have got that before this person? I feel like I've been doing this more. And like you touched on, you haven't been here for long. And Bakersfield was, I'm not sure how long you did that, but has there been any experiences that you felt like that?
That's a great question. And, I can only speak for me.
Right.
Yeah. I'm fortunate. I've had pretty much nothing but good stuff happen to me.
And that's
I've been very, very fortunate. And I think that people have recognized that a lot of people do have issues with that type of thing. And so I've been fortunate that people know African Americans want to see more people who look like them represented in certain types of media. And so in some ways, I understand that I've been able to fill that niche. And as a reporter, I'm able sometimes to get into places a little easier because of my background, because people will have some sort of comfort inherent to that situation, right? And so I've only had good things. And especially now here at the station I'm at, if you look at our weekend evening team, then it's 2 Black people who are up there, so it's myself and my anchor is Black. And the main, one of our 2 main evening anchors for our station is also Black.
Right.
And so we've had, we're doing pretty good. I think San Diego as a media market generally does pretty good. I will say in Bakersfield, no one ever said anything bad to me. In fact, I was treated extremely well at every station I was at. But I will say in Bakersfield, there weren't a lot of other Black people there.
Right. So that you kind of stood out in Bakersfield, but now you coming to San Diego, it's like, okay, at least, I see this. Okay, I see. It's kind of a little.
It's tough too, because one thing people don't often think of with broadcast journalism is that, okay, for me, I wanted to go to a school where I could study TV, right?
Right.
You know how much it costs for that school to build a studio? And that cost gets thrown right on your tuition. And so what happens is that many of the journalism schools that specialize in broadcasting, they are prohibitively expensive for many people who don't come from
money,
that don't have that level of privilege given to them.
Right.
And so that's part of the reason I say I'm so lucky. It really is just me being lucky that my family is able to give me that type of opportunity.
Right.
But that opportunity isn't there for so many other people.
Right.
And so then imagine the difference in education, where you have person 1 who is a very intelligent person but doesn't have experience behind the camera, and then you have kids from a broadcasting school where I've been literally doing reporter stories and anchoring since I was 18 in college on camera. It's just not going to be the same thing. And so that's one of the main problems fueling it.
Right. So I had a question that made me kind of think about that, because I'll talk to some people about them going to school. Did you feel? But I guess it also depends on what you went to school for. With you going to school, with college, did you feel like that basically gave you upper hand now as to if you, obviously you can't go back in time and see what it'd be like if you didn't go to college, but do you feel like that gave you upper hand, or you could have achieved the same thing without college?
Generally, the jobs to become a reporter require a college degree in journalism or communications.
Okay.
So generally, you're probably not going to get the job if you don't have a degree of some kind. And it's not that every journalism degree is expensive, but I will say, for me being a student once, I was blown away. I paid a lot for school, and I went to an amazing school. Right? I went to a great school, but I paid a lot. And I look at some of the other schools that I could have gone to, and I would have paid even more, even maxing out all the scholarships they could give me, as according to their, student aid people, right? So it's expensive education, but you need an education of some kind. But that's not to say, there's so many talented journalists though that don't go to one of those higher budget schools who do amazingly well. So it's not all about that. It is just one factor that can make things a little trickier.
Right. With you, have you ever been presented a story that you didn't agree with, but you had to report it?
That's a tricky question, only because if I had to look back,
and that's not even singling out any. You don't have to break down to any station or anything.
Yeah, I say it's hard to say I'd agree or disagree with any story, because keep in mind, I take my job as a journalist very seriously, and so that means that my opinion is not going to be a part of it. It's just not, and so that's the thing they tell you day one journalism school is that, you are there to report the news accurately and fairly. You are not there to assert your opinion into anything. That's the quickest way to get fired. I think a big misconception about news people is that, we just report what we want. You're going to see what we want. Man, do you think I went into student debt just to lie to people? It's that type of thing. So for me, it's hard to say I agree or disagree with a story, because you can speak about a topic fairly, and it involves reaching out to more than one side of an issue most commonly. And so it's hard to say I disagree with anything, because all I'm doing is basically being a mouthpiece for other people, being a conduit for other people to say what they want to say.
So in a way, with you basically kind of not being able to speak on your opinion with the story you're talking about, do you feel like that's kind of censoring you? In a way, and I'm not trying to get you in any type of shit at all.
No, not at all.
In a way, with you not being able to or they're like kind of suggesting don't bring your personal feelings into the story. If you felt some type of way, so say like it was issue something concerning that you are very involved in, but they wanted you to report it in a certain way and not get your feelings involved. Do you feel like that's some censorship, or that's just more so I gotta come do my job?
I think that the reason that I got into journalism is because I know that there need to be platforms that people can trust, and you're not going to trust someone to give you the news fairly if their opinion's involved. And so for me, not including my opinion in something including my opinion has never really been an option for me, because I don't see that I'm doing anyone any good just by telling them what I think, right? Because there are intelligent people who might think differently. So listen, I've talked to people from all spectrums, many of whom I've vehemently disagreed with, but that doesn't mean I'm going to censor your story.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I remember, when there were protests after Breonna Taylor's death, I was talking to both sides of that. I was talking to Black Lives Matter people and then Proud Boys, sometimes in like the same day. And so I would treat, and obviously I'm a person with feelings and opinions, but I treat them both the same. And I had nothing but good interactions with all of them, because my job is not to place judgment on anyone's belief. My job is to just bring to light what people are saying. Because I think we can't make progress in anything if we're not having honest conversations. 100%. We can't have honest conversations if people can't talk.
Right.
I'm just a mouthpiece to help people talk.
So with the news, I guess, if you you at such a young age now, what is the end destination for you?
End destination? That's a great question. Long story short, don't know yet. Yeah, there are a lot of good options.
And that's always okay to not know yet.
Yeah.
It's just like you're building up to that to figure out what it is that you really want to pursue.
I definitely see myself in the agri-desk someday. I think that out of all the jobs in a newsroom, that's definitely my favorite. I enjoy hosting the show. I enjoy speaking in that capacity, but I do love all these different jobs I'm able to do. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
What is it even like? So say you report the weather and what you reported doesn't happen. Does somebody come at you for that? Or it's like, this is what I was just supposed to report? That's
a good question. So when I'm doing weather, so the way weather people do stuff, I'm not making the National Weather Service puts out bunch of data sheets, right? So most of my job as a weather person in the beginning,
is it kind of like how I could look up on Google the 10-day weather forecast? Sort of.
They'll give you like a really detailed breakdown that through my experience I've learned to be able to crunch those numbers. It's a lot of crunching numbers, crunching data, talking about probability and all that stuff. So there are definitely times where I've said something like it's going to rain this time and it doesn't rain. But guess what? Most of these people are getting their stuff from the same place. Right. So if I'm wrong, you bet everyone else are wrong too, bro. They're gonna be wrong too. So it's like, yo, I did all I could, man. I looked at data sheets, numbers. I looked at satellite radars and futurecasts. If I have the best information available and then something still happened, but then again, I realized that things aren't going to be wrong by that big a margin. I've never seen it being wildly inaccurate. You know. So for you, was there any newscasters that kind of or even broadcasters, anything journalism that inspired you to want to continue to do that? Yeah, man, I grew up watching Lester Holt, and with NBC Nightly News. Always enjoyed the way he carries himself. He's another African American man, and he's at the highest level of the field. And so that was definitely an inspiration growing up, and watching his coverage. And so that was big. And I also just thought it was super cool. I mean, storytelling has always been a big part of my life, because that's for a long time how I connected to my heritage. I connected to my heritage through storytelling, right? Because I wasn't able to see them for a long time. So of course it's going to be important to me. With now you on the news, how's your family in Kenya? How have they reacted to that? Seeing you, they could tune into you at any time now. They're happy, man. I can hear my grandmother's voice in my head. Oh, look what he's doing, right? Yeah. It's been all love. They're very supportive of what I'm doing. Obviously, it's just the type of thing where people don't realize how regular of a job and a person on TV is. Being on TV does not change anything. It's just it's cool, but I don't want people to put too much into that, because one of the reasons I like being a journalist is because, again, you can add context to issues, you can be a mouthpiece, but also checks and balances for power, all that good stuff, right? But also no stories about me. You know what I'm saying? So it's at the end of the day, it's really not about me. So for me, it's not so much that I crave being behind that. It's not even like that,
Yeah.
but it's just doing the job too.
Right. And how is your family in Maine reacted to you now, being able to see you on the news? Because they're all the way out there, and now you're in San Diego. It's like,
yeah, I mean, they're happy. I mean, they helped me pay for the education. I bet they're happy.
Right. They're seeing something that actually evolved from what they put into.
Yeah, but they're super sweet, and they're they're very supportive. I'm really happy. I have my family and friends from back home and back in Kenya checking into my work sometimes, letting me know what they think of it, and so it's cool. And the people that are around you, they're really with you through all the ups and downs of getting to that point.
Right.
And so I can remember times that when you start out, sometimes you suck. And
right.
so I remember definitely sucking, and people around me let me know, right? So,
right.
so
at least they were honest and let you know, though. They didn't just like, oh man, you're great, and it was like,
look, I mean, look, when I was in college, man, woo, there were a couple bad ones. In high school doing radio, especially, there were a couple wild.
What was your worst one that you could even think of?
Yeah. So one time in Bakersfield, it was 11 p.m. I said, good morning. Started the newscast, and literally it says, news at 11. Good morning. I'm like, bro.
And it was live?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
it was live.
So there was no like, hey, let me do that again.
There was none of that.
So when you said good morning, you just continue.
Oh, yeah, because listen, man, if I'm a screw up, it's going to happen.
That's the same thing. It's like, I'm going to just keep it going.
I'm just going to keep going. And, I'm going to lean into that screw up. I said good morning. I realized halfway around, I'm like, it's 11 p.m. It's 11 p.m. I'm going to lean it. Good morning. I said the word. And guess what? You don't like I said good morning? Too bad. You're watching my show now. I'm joking to a certain extent, but it's really just like kind of get comfortable.
You're rolling
with
the
those mistakes.
punches.
Roll with the punches, man. You're going to mess up on live TV. That's inevitable. Everyone's messed up.
And what do you feel like one of your best experiences was on live TV?
Best experiences? It's a good question. I've had a lot of really, really solid ones recently, but I'd say one of them that sticks out was back in Bakersfield. I was doing a newscast. It was also 11 p.m. on a Sunday on a weekend. I think it was March 2021, where someone blew up their car during a newscast outside.
Outside the station?
Right outside the gate to the parking lot. They blew up their car.
Purposely?
Yes.
What did they blow it up with?
So can I tell like the context of it and everything?
Oh,
so
100%.
11 p.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So, and now I was off Monday and Tuesday that week. That was like my Friday night, right? End of the day. And so I turn on I'm anchoring the show, and I turn on the little, the camera, like our sky cam for weather. We have a camera that was pointing out in the skyline, but it showed the parking lot of the building. And then I just see fire. And I'm like, great. All right.
Great.
There's not going to be much of a weather report because there are flames and lots of smoke. And so I still.
And this is you reporting like that?
Yeah. The clips are still on YouTube to this day. And then. And so you see me, I'm like scratching my head, and even on, I'd seen so much crazy stuff. I am like weirdly accustomed to the crazy. Like I should have been freaking out more. But I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not talking about weather anymore. Let's talk about this fire. We don't know why there's fire, but there's fire.
Right.
Word. And then 5 minutes later after that, then a fire department evacuated us from the studio. And so live on air, I had to say, we're being evacuated. Something's going on, guys. I'll keep you posted. And so what happened is that they had like bomb squad pull up and like all this thing. We had to wait like 3 hours to get to our cars in the parking lot. It was crazy. But what happened is that it was all caught on security cam. There was a woman walking around barefoot outside the station, just trying to like, grab the door, trying to get in. And then eventually she drives her car up, pours gasoline in the car, and then lights her car on fire, and inevitably parts of that car explode right during our newscast, right outside the parking lot gate where everyone else's cars were.
Right.
And then before she had lit up the car, she also laid 11 wooden crosses in front of the parking lot gate.
Wow. She took some time.
She put a tuxedo dress on one of them, and in the two adjacent ones, she put wedding dresses on, and then she just left that there. And then no one knew what was going on, and then she turns herself in after. It was the weirdest thing.
This was a white lady.
Woo! I think her last name was Hernandez.
Okay, there we go. That I was wrong. That is something that, and once you even said Bakersfield, I know a little bit about Bakersfield, so it was like there's tons that go on and
Stuff happens. I've seen some things. That was just one thing I'd say. But the reason, going back to your question, why that's a highlight for me is because when else do you get tested like that? You know, like I know a lot of people who have been in news for some time, just as long as me, more or less, or whatever. Not many people get experiences like that. Right. That's a crazy human experience.
Right. You even talk about that. I was like, wait, what happened?
Yeah. So that imprints, you know, and that's something that's not just a job experience, that becomes a life experience. Yeah. You end up learning something because there's a bit of a risk if someone's blowing their car outside, it's on fire. And keep in mind, at the time, we don't even know. I hear fire and crosses not too far from each other. I'm like, KKK's gonna get me. I'm like, yo, oh man, I'm running. They're like, no. I'm like, I'm literally wearing a jacket over my head. I have my suit jacket over my head like this. I'm running around trying to hide. I'm like, and I might have overreacted a bit in that way in the moment, but
but nobody else would have understood like you coming from that perspective. It's like, wait, burning crosses outside.
The crosses themselves were not burning. The crosses themselves weren't burning, but firing crosses too close to each other, I was tripping.
Yeah, that's how in my mind they're burning.
Yeah, I was tripping, man.
And they got wedding dresses and something. Like, wait, they're trying to sacrifice me.
Yeah, I was like, man, this don't look good for me.
Right? It was like, hey, look good for me. Let me put my jacket on. Y'all don't see me at all.
Doesn't look good. And of course, that was stupid. And when everything ended up being fine, and it was just like, ooh, stuff happens, man.
How long did it take for you guys to even be able to go back in there?
Oh, people were back in the building within like a day or two. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You guys can go back the same night and continue shooting.
No, the show was over at that point. Oh, okay. Yeah, we were not going back that night.
Yeah.
And I was also a little bit shook, so I was like, no, that's not happening right now.
Exactly. It's like, I'll probably wait.
My day off was the next day. I was a half hour away from being off for the weekend.
And then that happened.
Yeah.
Then what you like? It's kind of like you back in Maine. Now you kind of. How was it that what made you think like, okay, I want to take this like who your lady is, like you wanted to bring her out here with you? Oh
man, that was a funny story. We met each other when I was like 16, and then we went to a summer camp together. And I thought she was super cute. This cute, girl who could dance and stuff, and she could sing. And
like you're like, oh, I can't dance, so this is a plus for me.
I know, and you know what I did? Nothing for 6 years. I did nothing
for 6 years.
Yeah, nothing for 6 years, and I had this crush on her, and it was super. I don't know what's going on. And then the pandemic happens, and then everything gets shut down. So she was in school. I was in school. We ended up back in Portland at the same time and reconnected.
This time, what you said 6 years? What grade are y'all in at this time when y'all?
So that was like right around that
summer
time.
Camp. And now,
so that time was like when I was about to graduate college, and she had a year of school left. So I finished my college career during the pandemic, and then left and went back to Maine. She was back in Maine. Stuff was getting weird near her too, and then we just ended up in the same place in the same time, and then we reconnected from there.
Right. That's crazy. You were all the way out in Maine, and now you get to this day. Like you guys made the decision to leave Maine and basically all come out to California.
Yeah, I mean, well, she was finishing school for my first year of Bakersfield. So basically what happened after that is I went to work here. She was in Canada, like near the east coast of Canada. Long distance for a year with a 4-hour time zone difference. That was fun.
Wow.
And then she moved into Bakersfield.
That's dedication.
That was fun. Yeah, I mean, it is dedication. I mean, it tests you. You know, it really tests you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you made it to this day. So, I mean, I feel like obviously this is something that you want to continue to pursue.
Yeah, man, we're not as broken. We got cats, bro. Everything's good. Everything's good. Living.
Life for you now in San Diego. What's that like for you, like on actually like off time from you, even from the news?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think off time, you know, of course, love to spend time together, me and my girl. You know, we're always chilling, always finding cool restaurants and stuff. I don't do that much though, bro. If I'm trying to sleep,
that's me. I'm like, I don't do too much.
I'm a night owl too. So I'm going to sit here in bed and I'll get up when I get up. It's like that. And so I'll do something like today. I went to the gym or whatever. And sometimes I'll, you know, it's really cool. You know, my girl does music as well. She's a very talented singer. So I can help her do some of the sound stuff with that too. So our days off are we take it slow. Because my days when I'm working, deadlines, talking to people, solving problems, it's awesome in a lot of ways, but then I'm also tired on my days off. I gotta chill too.
You have to take on everybody else's stress and whatever else that is that comes with that.
It's like everyone around you is stressed. You and everyone else around you are stressed. Yeah.
And you probably can't show that to the extent that you be feeling because you're actually live on camera, but can't obviously present that too.
I mean, by the time I get on camera, that's the most chill part of my day, honestly. Because if I just spent my whole day putting a reporter story together, then I have to go live, then that means the real hard work is done. By the time I get on camera and I'm just talking, that's more my comfort zone. So that is a more relaxed time. And there are some times where my head is exploding and I'm internally screaming, all good.
Right.
It's just all good. But then it's, you learn over time. I mean, it's something that you just have to do a bit. And then you get more accustomed to. And I'm by no means the most experienced in that. I have coworkers who have been in this industry for 20 years, 15, 20 years, right? So from that perspective, I'm still one of the young guys. But even at this stage in my career, I've had enough time in it to compartmentalize the stress. There's a time and a place for stress. Stress can be a great thing, and sometimes you just don't need it.
That's what now that you even went off that, how do you deal with mental health and stress? Because I'm sure like you just said, even working 12-hour days and things like that, and working with the news team and people, other coworkers and like that, how do you deal with the mental stress?
Trying to take care of myself, that became the big thing for me when I moved here. And then I realized that if you're really not taking care of, I'm bad in the morning. I'm awful in mornings, right? So it's getting better sleep, trying to get the gym a little more. And also on my days off, understanding that I don't always need to have a schedule. That's huge.
Right.
Getting off, my butt and doing stuff doesn't need to happen immediately. Because it's going to happen. I will do stuff, but I don't have to do that.
Right.
For a long time, I did therapy too. I think last time I was in therapy was probably I'm saying last summer or something like that, but therapy had been a huge part of my life for a long time. And I think that was an extremely valuable experience, And so I had that through a lot of college. And it's something that, especially as men and as African-American men, especially, we tend not to do a whole lot.
Right.
But what it did for me was give me a whole nother layer of resilience and mental stability to help me handle that stress. Because it can be a high stress environment, but you need to approach that with the right tool set, or else you're not doing good things for you. And if you're not doing good for you, you're not being good to the people around you either.
Exactly. So what even made you, when did you start therapy? How old were you when you
Good question. That was a long time ago. The first time I done therapy, I had to have been a teenager, just counseling type of stuff, because there were a lot of question marks in my life. There were a lot of question marks around things typical teen stuff, who am I, what am I doing, but also some heritage stuff mixed in. So there was a little bit of that. And then going through college, there were, definitely things that were happening, and things were good around me, and I always had great people around me. But for me, therapy was never a thing that needs to be a crisis situation. It's more of you take care of your body by working out, for instance, right? And I think that your resilience in your mental health is another muscle that you don't want to allow to atrophy with a lack of care. And so that's kind of the way I approach it for a long time, is that I knew the world is going to be tough at times, and whether I'm doing good or whether I'm doing bad during especially those college years, it's just a good thing to do for yourself. And that's something I definitely encourage more people to do if you're ever interested in it,
Right.
Is that it can really do good things for you. And of course there was always the question marks around it, but it helped me a lot personally.
Right. And with you being, so you said you started at a teenager, was that something you felt you wanted to take on, or it was suggested to you, well, maybe you, since you have these questions, you might want to look into therapy, or it was I want to go to therapy?
Good question. I think it was a little of both. It was kind of a mixture of things. I can't say that I remember super clearly exactly what led to it. All I know is that I'm glad that took place, because I think that, I'm a person who believes that at certain points in life, I think everyone can benefit from that, And it's not that everyone does it or everyone needs to do it or whatever, right? But it's just taking care of yourself can mean a lot of different things. And so if we're going to take all this effort to, buy nice clothes and do all this nice stuff for the outside and go to the gym and bust your butt or whatever else. You also, because I remember, because it's really all the external things in the world aren't going to mean anything to you
At all.
if you don't love where you're at to begin with. You won't appreciate it.
Right.
So you have to learn how to do that somehow.
With that being said, do you love where you're at now?
I do. I'd say I'm a flawed person. I'd say that
as we all are.
As we all are, right? And I think I'm achieving more and more balance. I'd say I'm definitely growing. I'm growing. I'm happy where I am now. And finally, to some extent, learning how to appreciate the present. Learning that it's not all about going crazy over what I don't have and what I want and for the future. It's kind of learning not to become so obsessed in the future that I lose where I'm at now. It's kind of learning to be a little more present.
Did you grow up as a people pleaser, or more so it was kind of, I know I'm doing it for self?
Oh, definitely people pleaser. That ain't even a question.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's getting a little deep on this one, but I will say one of the experiences that I had, and this is of no fault of anyone, but this is something that happens psychologically with a lot of kids who were adopted. And definitely happened with me. I won't even bring it to that context. I'll just say for me is that sometimes your sense of belonging can become wrapped up in the wrong things. If you don't have, if you have questions about concepts like family or friendship and everything and how family is made and all that stuff, if you have questions around that, your sense of belonging and your place within those things can become skewed. Even if your parents are wonderful, even if you have a nice family, even if all that stuff, you can have questions,
Right.
And so I think that understanding your inherent worth was the missing ingredient. But let's say if you grow up and you don't even know that you're missing that, then you start to value yourself by what can I do? What did I achieve? What can I show off? All these things that will make you incredibly fragile, because the second something doesn't go well, then you feel way disproportionately down about it.
Right.
So I'd say, man, I lost my train of thought with your question, but yeah, so hopefully that answers your question.
No, definitely. And like you said, you had questions early on. What did you feel like some of those questions that kind of even brought you to now I want to figure out, I want to go to someone outside of family that can help me with this? What were some of the questions that actually brought you to like, okay, they're going to be able to answer those for me?
It's not as much even, it is questions in a way, it is just kind of feelings, a feeling of discontent and not knowing where that comes from. And also I was, growing up, my mom is a nurse and she's been a nurse for decades. My dad's a physical therapist. So I grew up with people in the medical community in my family. And so they were very proactive about saying, okay, this might be a good thing, of like getting a professional to help out. Yeah, because it's like, who are you going to have help you out with your mind? You have a broken leg, you go to a doctor. But many times we have our internal wounds. We don't go to anyone.
And like you said, like even like as men, or even more so as African-American men, when somebody offers like therapy, that's like, what are you therapy? Like, what the hell are you doing with therapy? Like, what you need to go talk to somebody else? Like, but like you said, that benefited you in the long run.
Absolutely.
Because you were able to talk to somebody outside of that, maybe could understand what it is you're going through.
Absolutely. And I think people will understand more, because it's also a thing of like, if you're going really down in yourself, we can definitely deal with that whichever way we deal with it. But I think that it helps to have a person outside of your circle who you can just throw any problems you want at them. You don't have to worry that you're burdening other people either.
Right.
And most likely you're not anyways. Right. But still.
Because we always think like, I don't want to put this all on
and
you.
You can say whatever you want to say with pretty much zero consequence to your life.
Right.
Which is really healthy. And granted, it has been a little while since I've been in therapy. It's been a while, but I'm still taking, some of the things that I gained from it for sure.
Right. And probably with it being a while, that was like, it's been a while because you progressed from doing it at a young age. So it's like, maybe I'll go back at some point, but I feel like I got what I needed to get from it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not like it's ever a finished thing either.
We always need help.
In the same, I view it exactly the same as, let's say if someone's a person who worries a lot about their physical health, it's not like they're just done at a certain point.
Right. You got to continue to work out forever.
There's always new challenges. There's always areas you can improve on. And so it's kind of like, a lot of that, I think it's like contextualizing your flaws, because I think we can all get hung up on our flaws. But again, as men, as African Americans, or whatever else you want to say.
Right.
But as people in general, and people in general, I think being forgiving of yourself is so tough. When you make a mistake, convincing yourself that's not who you are. That's something a lot of people struggle with.
Right. Have you forgiven yourself for whatever it is that you feel like you haven't accomplished or achieved at this point? It's like, now like, oh, that's okay.
Well, one of the great things about therapy is that you have another person to kind of like, hey, I know you expect to have all these things. You are, in my case, like, dude, you're so young. What are you talking about? Like
you're killing it at this point.
No, it's not even that. It's just like, hey, you don't have to, like, it's like there are other things in life that are important, you know? And it's like, yeah, you can always look up to whoever you see in whichever forms of social media or whatever you choose to consume, and you'll see the opulence and the riches and all that stuff like that, right? But there's also understanding that when people say there's more to life than money, it's kind of the thing of saying like, well, yeah, of course you'd prefer to live at a sustainable pace where you have enough financial stability to be happy. You want that baseline, but from a certain point, you need to have your connections and your love around you. You know, like I can't imagine how much more difficult my life would be and how much harder my life would be if I didn't have love around me. You need that.
Definitely.
You need it.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I actually thought about today. I was like, something I said to myself, I'm like, love, shit, you need it. Like,
oh, yo, yeah,
it's honestly, cause shit, like everybody needs it. Like, I don't give a damn how hard or tough, whatever it is. Yeah. At the end of the day, everybody needs love around them. Like,
you need it around it, and you need to also give it back to in whichever way
100%, exactly. Whichever way you can. It's no selective form. You have to go through whatever way you feel most comfortable, give it back to. So that's definitely big. I thought about it when you said earlier, like, is your girlfriend still, I mean, your lady, I don't know if you're married.
Girlfriend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is your girlfriend, she's still doing music now?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what genre would you base that music in?
She is a singer, songwriter. Some people compare her voice to Amy Winehouse. She has a nice range, though.
Oh, wow.
She does a lot of dark pop type of stuff.
Yeah.
We're really excited. She had a recent release called Nobody Quite Like Me that is, up on streaming platforms and stuff. And so she's super talented. Right now, we're getting ready to roll out more releases. We got plenty of good content. It's going to be out relatively soon. But she's just talented, man. Like, I did my thing a little bit, but it's different when you see someone who's like,
right,
really there.
And with her now doing music, is that kind of making you more so want to go a little bit back into getting into that, or it's like, I'd have my time and I'm done?
It's just so different. Like for me, music is a hobby, and music was always a hobby. It was never my intention to be like a full-time musician. So I know that's not my path. So what her path is in my path, we're rolling together in life, right? But it's not like I need to do the same thing in music. But it's music being a hobby is definitely a big thing for me, because I remember just the time investment and all the other things. And if you go too crazy on a hobby, it can be detrimental in other ways. So it just achieving balance for me means more keeping it as a hobby.
Now, kind of like zeroing back on Kenya, like I seen on your Instagram, like you have pictures of like a lion damn near close up, like in a tree. Yeah. What was that like, seeing a lion in front of you?
I'm scared of certain animals. Lions are definitely on the list. If that thing, you see a lion and you see the power in that thing, they are fast.
Yeah.
They're faster than you, smarter than you, stronger than you. Right. Nature, we're not built for that level of natural competition or whatever. But honestly, that was fun. I mean, that was a zoo though. And that when I was in Kenya, like that was a cool experience, and I had never really been to a zoo like that before. But I mean, when I was in Kenya, again, I was in Nairobi. That city is urban, so that was my chance to get to a zoo. It's funny, so when I went to Kenya, I did just about everything but a safari. You know what I'm saying? Because like, I think a lot of the times growing up in the Western world, we can think of Africa, continent, okay, a billion different cultures and languages and ethnic groups, and also so much of it's urban. Like, to give some context, my uncle, who's, I'm very close with, he was an engineer. He worked on airplanes. Now he runs a fitness brand with my aunt. And my grandma, who's way out in the countryside, is getting her PhD in education, right? So it's there are a lot more parallels than you might expect being there. And again, the KFC thing.
And that even made me think, like, I mean, maybe you just agree or disagree, but why is it that Africa is always presented as so poor? Whenever they show a commercial about Africa, it's more so about donate to these kids that are just, and just, they don't ever show, like how you just talking about how your uncle's in the pilot, and then he's doing physics. I mean, he's doing fitness and things like that. Like, they don't show that realm of Africa. Why do you feel that is? And I don't even know if you agree or disagree.
I mean, it's yes, there's a few layers to that. I think one thing is that I don't think we see that much media or whatever else. I hate to use the term the media because then it comes to too many things. We don't see too many portrayals of African culture. We don't see too many portrayals of African daily life. I think it's more of a blind spot than anything. And I think that we're left with a preconception of poverty. But where that comes from largely, because my minor was global and post-colonial studies in college, is that many of these nations, Kenya included, actually were colonies for many years, in some cases, 100 years plus, 50 to 100 years plus. Then they were given their independence in the 1960s. And so at this point, you're talking about a space of about 70 years to develop, and after so much was taken, and so if a system is crippled by outside influences, it's not going to rebound in 70 years. You know what I'm
Wow,
saying?
man,
70
70
years, 70
years.
years. Yes, in between when Kenya was a British colony to the nation, to the nation that it is today. Right? So if you're looking at things in that timeline, I have relatives in Kenya that are older than the nation of Kenya, the independent nation of Kenya. And so it is dense, and there are a lot of different angles to it. And it's the same thing. One nation we look at a lot is Haiti. When I was doing like my minor in college, and that Haiti is, often cited as the most impoverished nation in the Western Hemisphere. And the reasons for that stretch very far back with colonialism, in large part from the French and the Spanish. And so when you're extracting resources, extracting labor, and kind of, even France had Haiti essentially pay a debt for its own independence. When you have
you have to pay for that.
So when you have such profound influences on the way that these nations formed not that long ago, then
like you said, 70 years.
Well, that's for Kenya in particular.
Right.
I mean, yeah. The exact date of Haitian independence is escaping me now. I'm sure it was, but even when you look at it from that perspective in terms of human history, it's a little bit difficult to understand why people would expect things to be rebounded so quickly,
right,
to the extent of Western culture. Because it is
like you're explaining, people don't even know that history. So that's even more so. They're like, oh, they've been able to do this forever, but it's like they don't even know that they just became to do this 70 years or whatever. And we were just talking about Kenya alone, but other places that have only been able to do this for X amount of time.
I mean, I did AP US history in high school, and I did that for 2 years, my junior and senior year. And I learned that Ulysses S. Grant was the one president to be buried with his horse, but I did not learn very much about any African nation. And so even me, I had gone a fair share out of my way to learn some of these things, but it wasn't that I got a complete education.
Actually even learn that.
Yeah, and my apologies if I fudged any dates or whatever, but in general context, but I mean, I do think sometimes about human history, right? You think about human history, we've been around for, a few thousand years, right? Like recorded human history, really, we're talking about a span of like, roughly 5,000 years-ish, right? We're talking about a span of human history of roughly 5,000 years. And really, if you're talking about the technological advancements and economic advancements, then you realize that that even the concept of a country isn't really that old. And so that was rooted in, we had feudalism in medieval Europe, and then we transitioned to countries that had to have been sometime. I wish I had the dates off the top of my head. Oh man.
Without like these 15, dates, you just sound fucking immaculate. So the dates are not.
Yeah. Well, 15, 1700, but the concept of a nation itself isn't really that old. So when we think back to like hundreds of years ago to like ancient Rome, like national borders and everything, that was less of a defined concept than we may imagine it to be. And so what we really had in the place of that, especially if you talk about places like the continent of Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, then you have basically these different ethnic groups that have their kind of amorphous territories that they separated with things like rivers and mountain ranges and stuff like that. And so when you think about that, and that the borders were a little more squishy, and that commerce wasn't as well defined, and that commerce looked different and communication was different and all this stuff, the interconnection was completely different, then you can kind of understand how, look at the changes we've had since the 1960s. It's a different world. And so imagine the extent to which those differences stretch back. And so it's like, yeah, man, it's like, I'm not into the whole saying one civilization better than another. Like, that's just crazy to me. It's just crazy. But I think it's kind of like appreciating that there are differences. I think one of the things that can be really good for the world and for humanity is not to be blind to the differences. I hate when people say colorblind or whatever else like that, because like if I'm in a talk, if me, a Kenyan American who grew up in New England or whatever, talks to a person from Kenya, there are gonna be some damn differences,
right?
Because you grew up culturally different, and it's just loving those differences and respecting those differences. Me and my girlfriend, her family's we grew up in the same hometown, but her family's Vietnamese. There are going to be some cultural differences and things that we understand, but it's just loving those differences that makes us global citizens. And I love the term global citizens because really at the end of the day, that's what we all are.
That was like, honestly, like that for that, what you just did, that was like a great fucking wrap up. I swear. And I always like, just so people could reach out to you, always drop wherever people can reach you, like wherever somebody can contact you, your social, your platforms where somebody can actually reach you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on every social media platform as at Moses_small. That is all my social media platforms across the board. And yeah, that's about it. Besides that, you can see me on ABC 10 News. I'm on Wednesday through Sunday, and those are all going to be evenings. So it's just you can I'll be on. You can see my social media. I'll keep you posted on where I'm at.
And if you could just let them know which podcast you was on.
I was on the BiGG Umbrella Podcast. That's big with 2 G's.
Hey.
Do not miss the second G. BiGG Umbrella Podcast. And I would just have to say it was a pleasure to be on here. And I really hope you guys keep tapped in with these gentlemen. They run an amazing production. And, it's a pleasure to be able to put on a show like this.
Thank you. I appreciate you for even from that drop. You heard it here yourself. It's been another episode of the BiGG Umbrella Podcast. That's big with 2 G's. That's big with 2 G's. And it's a wrap. Well, let's get some tacos, nigga. Can we really get some tacos? You trying to get some tacos? Let's get some tacos, nigga.